Good afternoon. We're again showing you some of the crafts you'll be able to see at the Living History Farms Crafts Festival, which is May 23rd, and that will run from 9 until I believe it's 5 o'clock at the Living History Farms, which are west of Des Moines. These ladies, or at least some of them, will be out there doing some quilting, and we're going to find out a little bit about that. Mrs. Tigner, can you tell us how you lay the quilt down on the frame?
Well, you get your frame to the size of your quilt, and then you pin the lining onto the frame. Then you lay the padding all over that.
What kind of padding is it that you're
Well,
using?
this is Dacron, D-A-C-R-O-N.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put the quilt on top and also pin it down.
Now, at this point, the quilt part is all appliqued on. The pieces are together. The flowers, in this case, are there.
Yes, this quilt was ready to go. It was all sewed together and in one piece laid on the frames.
Now, you said you could get it the size quilt you want, so you can vary it on the frame then. Is that right?
No, you have to have your frame the size of your quilt.
But I mean, can you get different size quilts?
Oh, yes.
So you can arrange it.
You can make your quilts any size you want to.
Okay. So the applique is on, and now they're doing the quilting stitch.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of needle do they have to use for this?
Regular quilting needles and quilting thread, which is wax thread.
And nothing else will work. You have to use the quilting needle and thread.
Well, it's better. I think a long time ago they used to use ordinary thread, but now we're using the quilting thread.
And what was she saying? 8 to 9. What does she mean?
8 to 9 between the needle, quilting needle.
It's the size of the needles.
And 8 to 9 is the size of the needle that you need, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I know you were saying when you're putting your thread through, there's one thing you have to keep in mind. What's that?
Oh, to be sure that your knot doesn't show.
So you have your hand underneath you, and you're going to pull that thread through, aren't you?
I always put my needle down from the top, though, and then pull it up that way.
And, of course, part of the quilt's already done, and that's what you have turned under here, and you'll keep turning it under.
So we can reach farther over.
Okay. Now, there are, let's see, 7 people working on the quilt. Is that a common number? How many can work on a quilt this size at one time?
Oh, about 8 or 10.
And how long would it take them to complete one if they worked 3 or 4 hours in a day?
Oh, I expect it'd take about a month.
Okay. Now, not all quilts are this applique.
Oh, no.
What are some different kinds of quilts?
Well, there are a lot of pieced quilts. Some men, I think it's kind of foolish to cut up material in little pieces and sew it together again.
She just finished one.
She had a pieced quilt that she just did.
Yes.
So then you wouldn't have the applique work. You just put those little pieces that you cut together.
Yes, it would all be pieced together like that one laying over there, you know.
What were some of the occasions when women would have quilting bees in the past? Weren't there special times when they'd get together to work on quilts?
Well, I don't know.
I thought maybe like if a girl was going to get married, they'd all come together and help her make her quilts or something.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
But, I quilted at University Church for a good many years.
How do you come across a frame like this? Are there very many of these around, or are they hard to find?
I don't think there are very many around. Some carpenter has to make one.
Okay.
My husband made mine. He made mine for the size quilt I was going to be doing.
She said that her husband made her own frame for the size quilts that she'd make, and of course you can vary them to get the size quilt to fit your bed or wherever you're going to put your quilt. And we're going to talk about chair caning now.
You see, after we get this rolled, make it smaller, we have some smaller or shorter sticks to put here on the ends. We're going to use those when we go out.
Down away with you, see.
Oh, I see. Eventually you won't have this part of the frame here, will
It
you?
won't take up so much room then.
Okay. Thank you. This is Mr. L.G. Harder, and he is caning a chair. Mr. Harder, how did you get started doing this kind of thing?
Oh, I don't know. I just picked it up. I had a chair that I wanted done, and I watched a man do it. And
You learned it just from watching?
just from watching, yes. And then I later got a book that told me all about it. So,
How long have you been doing it?
20 years, I guess, more or less. I've caned about A dozen chairs in the last year.
So you do them pretty quickly, really, if you can do 12 in a year.
Well, I take my time at it, and it's kind of tedious work. I work a little while and rest a little while.
Do you have to do anything special to the chair? Do you make the chair yourself?
No. I oftentimes have to refinish the chair first. Take the paint all off or whatever's on it and bring it down to wood and then stain it and re-varnish it so it looks like new again.
How about the holes, though? Are they already there?
They're already there. There's two kinds. This is the old kind, and the new kind just has a groove in it, and the cane comes already woven, and it's just set in this groove. That's the way they do it at present.
That would be the easy way then, wouldn't
That's
it?
the easy way, yes.
But in your way, you have the holes. Now, is it a set number of holes always?
Have to have even numbers, and when it's all finished, then there's a bead goes around the edge that covers up all the holes.
Okay, how about the material that you're using now to cane your chair?
Well, this is just regular cane like this, and comes in lengths of about 12 to 20 feet, and
But it's already in the strip. You don't
it's
have to.
already in the strips. You buy it just that way.
How much of it would it take to do a seat?
Well,
Can you approximate or?
about half of a amount that I've got there.
Okay. Now, you don't use a needle or anything. What tools do you need?
No, all I use is my hands, and it's just weaving in and out. You have 4 steps. The first step, you put them all down this way. Then the next step, you put them all this way. Then you go again and put another strip in the same holes that way. And then this is the 4th step. Now I'm getting this way. Then when that's all done, then you go crossways and this way. And that draws it all into a perfect pattern.
So there's 6 steps altogether, and you're on the 4th one
Well,
now.
there's 7 counting the strip that goes around the edge. I'll show you what I mean by that. When you get done, this strip goes in like that, down in this hole.
Oh, I see.
That finishes up 7 steps.
Are there different patterns that you can use on the seat?
Yes, you could, but this is a regular pattern that you generally use.
It's a standard one, huh?
Yes, it's the standard one. Sometimes you use a heavier cane and make a different kind of pattern in that. That's where they have just the rounds, and you have to go over and under and round and round and round like that. That's a different kind, and they can use this kind of cane or they can use a heavier cane.
But you prefer the lighter weight?
Oh yes, this is much easier to do.
What are these tools that you have?
Well, sometimes I have trouble getting in,
Underneath,
getting
probably.
underneath, and especially towards the end. And in that case, I have to use the awl to raise them up like that, you see,
So they can get the other piece
so they can get them
underneath.
in. Yeah, and this is used to hold it so that the length won't pull out.
Does your cane ever break?
Oh yes.
That's the problem.
Often, and that's one of the things. You get a whole row made and all at once snap.
Oh, dear.
Take it out and start over again.
Okay, that's Mr. L.G. Harder, caning a chair. We'll be back again tomorrow. See you then. Good afternoon. We are again at the Living History Farms west of Des Moines, and today we're on the 1840 farm, and with me is again Mr. Darwin Tatey, who is the manager of the 1840 farm, and you built the cabin behind us. Can you tell us a little bit about its construction?
Yes, this is a typical pioneer cabin of the 1840 to 60 period here in this area. The cabin is 14 by 20 feet, and it's built of oak logs that we cut down right here in the vicinity.
What's the mortar that you've used?
The chinking in between the logs to seal the spaces in between the logs is native clay.
And is this what normally was used back then?
Yes, the clay was used especially in this earlier type of cabin such as we have here. As they got into the more square hewn type of cabins, oftentimes they used a mortar of lime and sand.
But this was a later development in the log cabin business?
More so, yes. This type of cabin was often built first because there was less time actually to build, to get your cabin up before the first winter. And as you see, the bark is still on the logs, and the logs have not been hewn, they've just been cut down. And the corner style is called notch and saddle, which is a little quicker type of construction than the more finished houses.
Is it any warmer when you leave the bark on, as in this one?
Actually, you wouldn't have any real difference in warmth. Most of the warmth of these cabins came from the fact that they were quite thick-walled, and usually they were heated with a fireplace of various sizes. Now this cabin has a fireplace in the other end.
But taking the bark off is just a more refined way of doing it, that's all.
It's just a better way of finishing up your cabin and making it a little neater.
Now you said the corners of the house are notch and saddle. Can you explain that a little more?
Yes, the notch and saddling is taking the log, the lower log, and cutting it crossways with your axe. Let me show you how these corners are made here. You see the bottom log is notched in a saddle-like formation, a V shape, and your upper log laying on that is again notched crosswise. The lower one is called the saddle and the top the notch. So there's your notch and saddle cabin.
What other kinds of corner pieces were used other than the notch and saddle?
The squared beam cabin, what you do with the broad axe, is usually dovetailed at the corners, and they're dovetailed in such a manner that the rain and water will run out of them, such as I built the log church at the state fairground, and if you go down there you can see how each cut is face down so the water will run out.
So this is an easier way to do it?
This is an easier way, and this also excludes rain or snow water too.
What kinds of tools do you need to do that?
We have a few of the tools here that I've used on building and restoring various cabins, and this is the broad axe, which I've used the most often. This is what's called a half handle. It's a short length broad axe, and it's used for squaring the round beams into square. And also I have the tool here to make the shingles with, the froe. This is a rather rare type here, the knife froe, and I used it to build and make all the shingles for this cabin. Here's the more conventional type froe, this type, and it's held in this manner on your block of wood, and then you drive it through with a wooden mallet.
With this type, do you have to use a mallet?
Yes, you do. You use the
both
mallet
types?
with both types.
And then how about this one?
This is a rather large broad axe, which I've never used much because it's still in new condition. As you see, it still has the label on. And another reason I'm a little hesitant to use it, it's 14-inch bit. I really
it's
haven't used
long.
that large axe before.
This is also unusual in another way, too.
Yes, this is a left-handed axe, and oftentimes people will mention a left-handed axe because it's beveled from only one side. With most, you can turn the head over and make it right or left, but this one, particular head, the handle will only fit in from the left, so it is a left-handed axe.
Okay, how about this one here?
This tool here is called a slick, and it's just a large chisel-like instrument, and it's used for peeling the bark off of logs, as well as smoothing down rough spots on your logs or on your boards.
So now you'd use this like for the doors
Yes, you use it to pare down or trim your rough spots on your wood.
to get the bark off.
Yes.
How about this one?
This is what's called a long-billed adze, and I used it to do most of the work, as you see, up along the gables of the cabin here. And you use it just like a hoe. Your log lays out flat, and you take it like this and go right down your log, chipping off and flattening your log.
Do you have a hard time finding tools like these?
Well, not too hard, really, if you keep looking for them. It takes a little luck and a lot of looking to get the type of tools you want. The broad axes are fairly common yet.
Now, you mentioned that you built the log cabin church, which is at the fairgrounds. Have you made other log cabins besides these two?
Yes, I've built a couple of others. I built one at our museum that we had operated at Glidden, and also I've restored several cabins.
How did you learn how to do this?
Well, mainly just through having an interest in this type of work, and I began to collect several of the tools that did this type of work and just wanted to learn how to use them.
Now, when you look at these and you see this huge log, you know that you couldn't have lifted it yourself. Did you have help when you were building?
One man worked with me last summer to get this cabin built, and we lifted the logs in with a lift.
And normally how would they do this in the past? They wouldn't have had a tractor or anything to...
No, in the past they either wouldn't have built this large a log cabin, or if they did, they would use several neighbors and roll the logs up an inclined set of poles to place them in.
Let's talk a little bit about the roof and how you've done this.
The roof is split from pine logs and are mostly done with the froe. I spent part of last summer splitting out the shingles for that. And we're having a craft festival that will be coming up next Sunday, and we'll be demonstrating the making of shingles then.
So you've used shingles all over the roof, but you haven't used any nails, or have you?
The roof has shingle nails in to hold it down. Now, one of the old methods was not to use nails and lay the weight logs across, but in a cabin of this period they would have used nails for the roof.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the other things you've done here on the 1840 farm that you've built yourself.
Yes, we have a storage cave dug over at the north side of the cabin here. We have our garden in this year with the various vegetables and things planted, and also I have a field which is over back of us here, and that's planted to rye and corn and pumpkins. We're trying to grow the crops that would have been grown back at that period of time.
Do you have any facilities for cooking outside?
We have a place to the west of the cabin here that the poles spread for the kettle to hang on, and this would have been used to render lard and to cook soap and so forth. Also, we're building a smokehouse in that area.
So it's back there too.
Yes, this is back of the garden area.
You've also done the fences which are around the house.
Yes,
How do you do these?
the fences in the background here are what's called stake and rider fence. It's rail fence that was typical of that period of time.
How about the structure that's over this way? What's that?
This pole barn is a structure that was used back at that period of time to house livestock, and it's called a pole barn. It's just the poles laid up, and every fall they would cover them with wild hay and leave it covered throughout the winter. And in the spring they usually took the hay off and fed it to the livestock.
Other than the smokehouse, are there other things you're going to be building here?
Yes, the 1840 farm here will have another outbuilding and later on another barn too for storage of grain and implements and so forth.
Now, you've mentioned your crafts festival. Let's again give the people some information about that.
The craft festival will be held at the Living History Farm site east of the interstate Sunday, May 23rd. And this will have about 20 crafts and demonstrations of many of the old crafts that were used.
And it's from 9:30 to 5.
9:30 till 5, and the admission is $1 for adults, and children under 16 are free.
And again, now how can they find the Living History Farms?
We're west of Des Moines on Interstate 80 and 35 at exit 32. You just this is Old Highway 6 east of Adel.
So if you'd like to see some more of the crafts we've looked at this week and many others, go to the Living History Farms May 23rd. We'll see you next week. Good afternoon. We are again today at the Living History Farms, northwest of Des Moines. My guest is Mrs. Judy Tatey, and we're talking this week about some of the crafts that you'll be able to see at the Crafts Festival here at the Living History Farms. This is May 23rd. Let's tell them the times and the admission, this kind of thing.
It'll start at 9:30 and close about 5, and the admission is $1 per person and under 16 free.
Okay. How can they get here from Des Moines? Give them directions.
They can come out on the interstate and get off at exit 32, and that's at the junction of 35 and 80, Interstate 35 and 80.
There's kind of a detour here they're going to have to go around, right?
Right, but they can get through it though.
Okay, we don't want to scare them off when they see that. They can still get here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about coffee grinding, and let's start first and talk about this. What do you call it?
This is the coffee mill, or coffee grinder, and this is about 100 years old, this particular one.
Where do you get a hold of this kind of thing?
This one we've had so long I don't even know where we got it, but you can get them in the antique stores. They still have them. They're not rare.
A lot of the equipment that you use here on the farm, things like this, do people donate these to you? How do you find them?
They're donated to us, or we just buy them from people that heard about us, or a lot of things we just have because we used to have a museum, and we just have it from the museum.
What's this constructed of? What's it made of?
I don't know what kind of wood it is. It's just the wood and the metal grinder inside.
It's basically just a wood box and then the grinder, and that's all there is to it, really. It's pretty simple.
Right. Then it has a little drawer at the bottom.
Okay, how about the beans that you use?
I use beans that I buy from the local grocery store, and there's two different kinds of beans. One gives you a strong flavor, and this particular kind gives you a more mild flavor.
How many beans does it take to make what is kind of a standard pot of coffee?
Well, I fill my drawer up, and I don't know how many beans that is, but I do fill my drawer up, and that gives me about 4 tablespoons.
Can you show us how you do it?
Okay. First, I put my coffee beans in the coffee grinder through this little hole.
Now, is there some level that you're putting it up to, a line or something, or you just fill it full?
Oh, I just fill it to maybe half full or so.
And you just buy your beans at the store. Could you have some imported, or is this the only way you can get a hold of them? You have to buy them.
You have to buy them.
You can't
probably
roll
from
them around here or anything.
No. And you have to, there's a little handle here, and you hold on pretty firm. The children enjoy doing this.
How do you know when it's ground enough?
Well,
When it gets to that?
oh, well, I'm just, it's grinding continually. I'm just, it takes a long time to grind them. And you can grind different, like for drip coffee or percolated coffee, or you can grind your coffee beans finer or coarser just by regulating this little wheel here.
You said it takes a long time. Just about how long would it take to do this many beans?
It would take maybe, this many beans? It would take maybe 10 minutes, I imagine. I just grind enough to fill the drawer, and then I know that I have enough for my coffee pot. Can you smell the coffee beans?
Mm-hmm. Is it hard to clean this out when you just have that hole in the drawer?
Well, I don't clean it.
You're just putting beans in all the time. I guess it wouldn't really matter, would it?
Right. But it takes a little longer to make coffee this way than it does just to buy it already ground from the store.
Is the flavor better, though?
Oh, we think so. And we've had other people say that they enjoy it better.
Okay, we're going to talk about cider making. We can head over this way. To my right is Judy's husband, Darwin Tatey, and to the left, Chuck Schaffner, and they're making apple cider. Darwin, can you tell us about the machine first of all?
Yes, this is a old cider mill, and we're using it to grind the apples right now into this lower basket. It has the two baskets, and as you fill this one, you slide it ahead and press the juice out, and of course the cider is just the apple juice.
And there's a metal tray of some sort.
Yes, this
the
tray
bottom.
holds the juice, and it'll come and run out of this front pan up here.
How old probably is this?
This press is probably 75 years old, and this is typical of the cider presses with the grinder. You grind into the first basket, slide it ahead, and squeeze your juice, and then you can change your second basket around and grind into it.
Was this a standard size one, or were there different
This
models?
is quite standard for home use or for use on the farm. They made much larger ones for commercial use, and some were even hydraulic, but this is a common standard home size.
How about the parts of it? Now you've got a crank here and the gears over here.
Yes, this is the crank that you turn. You pour your apples into the hopper here, and you can set your grinding so it will grind different coarseness for different hardness of apples, and the gears just grind it down into the basket.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do some.
Okay.
It's about a two-man process. One has to load and one does the grinding. Do you have to prepare the apples any special way?
No, there's no special preparation for the apples other than see that they're fairly clean, and they should be well ripe.
Are some apples better than others for making cider?
Yes, Jonathan apples make a good base apple for cider. Different people have their own recipes of how they like to mix. Today we're using the Jonathan apples here, as well as delicious apples. And you mix them together and get a sweeter or a little more tart cider.
Depending on what your own particular preference would be.
Yes.
Then. Okay. What was the cider used for? Just as something to drink?
The cider was a summer drink, and also you can make vinegar from the cider by letting it sour. You can make hard cider by letting it ferment. Generally, the cider was kept in the cave in a stone crock or in a more often in a barrel, and used as a drink through the winter and on into the summer.
Did they have any problems with the water so that they had to drink something else instead?
In certain areas, ciders were used and other drinks if the water wasn't too good. Cider makes a good drink.
You've got a full basket. Now what's the next step?
The next process is to move it ahead and squeeze out the juice.
So you have two baskets, and you could keep both processes going on at the same time.
Yes, you can just circulate your baskets, and it works much faster than the single press.
Okay, we've got about a minute. We can show a little bit of this. This is a cider mill, right?
This is called a cider press or a cider mill, yes. Now I'm ready to squeeze out the juice from these apples. And usually you have to strain the juice again so it'll settle and become clear.
But you don't add any sugar or anything else to it. This is just the way it's going to come out, and that's the way it'll be.
Yes, there's no additives.
How much cider will one of these baskets make?
It depends a lot on how juicy the apples are, but you can get anywhere up to 3/4 of a gallon from one squeezing.
And then you strain it again, and it's all ready to go.
Yes, you have to strain it, and if you want good clear cider, you leave it settle and then rebottle it into bottles, and you get the cider that you see in the stores, the much clearer cider.
Can you tell us what the machine to your right is?
Yes, this is a juice press here and used mostly for grapes and cherries. You see it doesn't have the grinder on that the cider press has.
Okay, we'll be back at the Living History Farms tomorrow. See you then.